everyone, and welcome to our Scots Whay Best Music of 2018 podcast. I am joined again by Chris Wall.
Hello,
Chris.
Hello.
Wesley Shearer.
Hello.
And we may be talking about young fathers later on, so we've got our very own young father, Ian Gregson.
Nicely done.
And what we're going to do this time round is we'll each read out our list of favourite albums, because there might be some crossover, and then everyone kind of gets a mention. So I'm going to start off with Scots Whay Best Albums of 2018, and they are in no particular order. Modern Studies, Welcome Strangers, Carla J. Easton's Impossible Stuff, L-Space, Kipple Arcadia, Catherine Joseph's From When I Wake The Want Is, Viva La Rose, For She Who Hangs the Moon, Zoe Bestel's Transience, and C.S. Buchan and Friends with C.S. Buchan and Friends. Chris, what's your list?
Again, order is kind of nebulous for the most part, so just the 10 albums I really like this year, spent a lot of time with. Your Queen is a Reptile by Sons of Kemet, 2012 to 2017 by Against All Logic, Hive Mind by The Internet, Cocoa Sugar by Young Fathers, Crush EP by Raiden Lene, Post Era by Lilo, Skylight by Pinegrove, There's a Riot Going On by Yola Tango, self-titled album from Kids See Ghosts, and Honey by Robin.
Okay, and Wesley?
I actually have not put together a list of 10, but I have a very, very, very long list of albums that I've listened to and not spent a lot of time with.
Okay.
But I will reveal all as we discuss.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, intriguing. That sounds like Wesley hasn't done his homework, that's it.
That's exactly what it is. Can't make the choice of the 10.
So, from the original list that I read out, the Scots Whay list, is there any that you would like to discuss?
Catherine Joseph. Let's start with Catherine Joseph.
Let's start with Catherine Joseph. It's an amazing. So I think that her last album was kind of so revered, very difficult to follow up a record that's kind of means so much to people. But I think she definitely did it. From When I Wake the Want Is.
Yeah.
What can you say about Catherine Joseph? Just amazing. Singer songwriter that is kind of unlike anyone else. I mean, There's not really anyone else that does what she does. I mean, there are other people that obviously are piano-based, keyboard-based singer-songwriters, but there's something about the way she does it that seems to be unique.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's almost that kind of otherworldly kind of thing. It seems like it's coming from some place deeper than herself. Kind of, she's drawn on this kind of well of deep emotional intensity. It's not like you think singer-songwriter at piano. It's not light. It's not.
It's not Elton John.
It's not Elton John. It's not easy listening as such. I mean, it's not to say it's dissonant. It's just the kind of the intensity of the emotions and the kind of the turmoil that you can hear underneath it, and the kind of way that she builds soundscapes out of it. Because obviously, every song is kind of based around voice and piano, but then it kind of develops from there, and you get the kind of the production work that goes into it. And
I think that's an interesting point, by saying it's not easy listening, because that intensity of emotion, some people don't like it. They don't like dressing it and feeling it, and it does make people uncomfortable. I think that's interesting in itself. I
think it really came through. I don't know if you saw the live version of it. She presented at the Tramway, in association with. No. I've completely forgotten the name of the theatre company now. That's terrible. The kind of experimental theatre company in Scotland. That's awful. No, it's along similar lines. That's absolutely terrible. It's one word. I forgot.
We'll put a note in.
But so she did a full album performance. She did a couple of nights at the Tramway, and then took it to Dundee and Edinburgh as well, and possibly down to London. And it was Converse Theatre Company. And she did it in collaboration with them, so it was a very designed performance. It was just her at the piano by herself, playing the album straight through, so no pause to talk to the audience or anything, no songs from earlier work. It was just a complete full album performance that lasted 45 minutes. The lighting was designed to be keyed into the emotional tenor of the album. She was wearing a specially designed outfit for it. There was kind of a set around her, a kind of series of mirrors that were able to be tilted and posed, and everything was just where it was meant to be. It was very kind of stage managed. And it was a really again blurring the line between kind of theatre and live performance, and there wasn't really much in the way of additional material between songs. And she would occasionally get up and there'd be some stylized movement. She'd move a mirror, or she'd like lift a glass and drink in a very particular way or something like that.
So
but it was just kind of
a theatrical performance as well.
Yeah,
as
it was
musical.
bringing that kind of element of stagecraft to a performance of the album rather than necessarily being like a narrative piece that featured songs from the album. But yeah, it was just a really, again, the intensity of it, like just really kind of really great, overwhelming performance.
I know this is the music podcast, but going back to the film one which we recorded sometime previously, best thing about Outlaw King was her songs
in the credits. Yeah, absolutely.
Was it an album you managed to listen to?
Yeah, definitely. I've always been a fan of anything she's really been working on. As Chris touched on, she's an extremely unique artist. And again, going back to that film podcast, if you want to talk about not championing somebody because of their nationality, she's very much, when we were discussing Lynn Ramsey, creating her own unique thing that is actually transcends on nationality. I think Catherine Joseph is very, very similar in that point. She is someone who is filling the void of, the sort of lack of, Joanna Newsom and Kate Bush and all those kind of things, which are
She's certainly up with those people.
Very, lazy comparisons in a sense, but that theatrical music, vocal, piano thing that hasn't been done a lot lately.
I think as well her collaborations are interesting with Adam Hubbard and with Outlines, that's the name of it, because whatever she does or whoever she worked with, she adds something to it. For me anyway, when the Outlines album's a great example. Her presence is just kind of takes things to another level, I think, anyway.
And she's very actively involved in the sort of creative community as well, which is always an encouraging thing.
Yeah, you see her everywhere.
Yeah.
Like she's always out and about, like gigs and other kind of creative endeavours. She's always there supporting the kind of scene and everything. Like, yeah, she's a key part of it.
I mean, it's maybe a good time to mention this. I think at the moment the Scottish music scene is as healthy as it's ever been in terms of that, in terms of the way that people support each other and kind of, there's not which has not always been the case. But Wesley, maybe you could say what you think about that.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think we touched upon I've completely forgotten the name of it now. That film last year about Scottish film.
Super November?
No. About, it was last year's podcast.
Last year's.
It was about Adam Hubbard and
I know exactly. The one about Chemical Underground.
Yes,
right? They went to Lost in France.
Lost in France, that's the film.
Yeah.
Got there eventually. Yeah. So we got...
Don't worry, Ian can edit this.
Everything's getting older.
Right, man.
So as we discussed that last year, we talked about the flaws of that film in the sense that it was harping back to an older day of creative community and wasn't really properly looking forward. It was looking back and it was looking introspectively, and I think since that this whole flourish of creative community across not just Glasgow, not just Edinburgh, but both cities has really came together and worked really, really well. And there's been lots of cross collaborations from people you wouldn't expect to work together, which has then formed this new community, and people have been involved from different labels and helping each other out, which I know you're a big supporter of a lot of local labels yourself, Ali. And it's a really, really healthy time at the moment. I can't say particularly that there's been a huge amount of Scottish releases that I've been familiar with this year, other than the obvious ones that we'll discuss. But what I have noticed is that really supportive sort of energy. It's been like a call to arms almost of creative musicians from across varying genres and varying backgrounds.
Absolutely, and I was lucky enough to do a couple of podcasts, one in Dundee and one in Aberdeen, and it was the same thing in both those cities, that there's a real boost in creativity but collaboration as well, and people saying, right, okay, I'm a visual artist but I want to do a show with some music, so who can I get to come along and play to that? And that goes with a show and film, or there's going to be some spoken word. I was at a thing just recently where it was the launch of a poetry collection, but there was music at it as well, and there seems to be a really good collaborative and supportive atmosphere around the place at the moment.
So there's a real diversity of sounds as well. I think a lot of genres that, even 10 years ago would have been almost unthinkable to be kind of bands that would have been, to think of them as being a key part of the scene now, the kind of music that they're making, just because the stereotypical image of Scottish, independent music is Postcard, is Chemical Underground, is is guitar driven, is all of this largely male, largely white, and just there's so much coming through now that is so kind of putting the light of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, just like so many different kind of types of music being made now. I mean, obviously we're inevitably going to talk about Young Fathers, and I imagine it's going to happen sooner rather than later. But just the thought that 10 years ago, the consensus best band in the country would be Young Fathers, and the kind of music that they make is just it's just like such a welcome development. Just the fact that a band like that can even exist and sustain themselves, and not just that, but break ground, being the first act to win the Scottish Album of the Year award twice, and be nominated for the Mercury, and sell out so many venues across the country so many times in 1 year, and have such a loyal following and all that. It's just such a heartening development. It's
incredible. I mean, let's talk about them now, because they very quickly have gone from being unusual to being just one of the main bands around, selling out big gigs all constantly, as you say, albums of the year, and not just Scottish Album of the Year, but a lot of people's favourite album of the year, I think. And why does the album, for instance, work so well for you?
I think it's just, again, it's like Catherine Joseph. They're doing something that's kind of maybe on the surface is similar to what other people have done in the past, but they bring just that kind of level of intensity to it, and there's that kind of molding it and to fit their own personalities. For me, obviously they initially started out kind of being categorised as hip hop, I would say, more than anything else. They were you'd get them mentioned in the same breath as Hector Berserk and Stanley Odd and all that kind of era, maybe 5-6 years ago, that kind of era of Scottish hip hop kind of emerging. But now they're almost kind of like Scotland's answer to TV on the radio, I think, more than anything else. They've become this kind of weird art pop thing where they'll still refer to themselves as a boy band, and when you see them live, they do perform on. They look like a boy band on stage. It's the three of them up front, behind microphones, and then they'll have a live drummer behind them, and they'll set off backing tracks and stuff, and they'll occasionally they'll tinker about with computers and what have you. But the visual presentation of them is still very much as a pop act. They'll dance and they'll sing, but it's just this kind of mutant strain of pop that's not quite
It strikes me, probably because I've subtitled loads of old Top of the Pops, but if Top of the Pops was still going on a programme like that they're exactly the kind of band that folk would be, oh my god, who the hell is this? And then go out and be huge because of it.
I think that they're a band as well that seeing them live just completely changes your experience of them, because it's such an incredible live show. Even from the first time I saw them was at it was a charity gig, and it was in the Armadillo, so I was seated for it. It was in the balcony. I think they were on the bill with Bell and Sebastian, Mogwai, and Franz Ferdinand, and Young Fathers opened. I'd never seen them live, or I'd been a fan of the records, but even from the distance of being up in the balcony, as far away from the stage as you can get, just the force of that show was so overwhelming that it was just this is unreal.
And that is interesting.
This music is being made here.
Because if you think of the three other bands you've mentioned, they are old school Scottish indie pop. Yeah. That's kind of how we think of them, without wanting to be and then you've got this new sound breaking through. I think it's interesting actually to look at the shortlist from this year's Scottish Album of the Year. I know we talk about this every year, but this year it makes your point very well, because you had Babe, Best Girl Athlete, Franz Ferdinand, Golden Teacher, Cream Polwart with Pippa Murphy, which is a great record, Mogwai, Outlines, Siobhan Wilson, and the winners, of course, Young Fathers. I mean, that's a really diverse and healthy, shortlist. And I know not everyone likes the idea of awards for music and all of these things, but it does get the discussions going, and these sorts of discussions going, definitely.
I think Young Fathers, again, I don't think anybody was expecting it to happen just because they'd won in the past. I think when everybody was talking about not laying bets necessarily, but trying to weigh the odds of who was likely to win, I think everybody just immediately ruled out Young Fathers because they'd won before, and you're like, well, they've never given anybody the award twice. It's probably not going to, why would they start now? It's only 6 years in or whatever. There's so many that, they'll probably spread the wealth a bit. So I think the fact that they've already been no, that doesn't matter, Young Fathers made the best album.
They made the best album. Yeah.
And it's interesting that you were touching on the whole sort of boy band pop thing, because you think back to way before they even brought out Take One, that's what they were. They were a pop band. They were making really bright, colourful pop music with hip hop infused elements to it, and it gradually honed their sound to become this more visceral, intense, but still with that boy band sensibility. And I remember they discussing it a couple of years ago when White Men or Black Men 2 came out, and I was discussing how it was sort of, the initial reception to it for me was really, really great, but by the time it came to the end of the year, it wasn't on my end of the year album list. But this album called Sugar has been entirely different, like straight from the off. You just knew this was a complete game changer.
Yeah, it's an amazing record.
It really, really is, and it's relentless from start to finish. The energy on it's incredible. You could strip back the lyrical content on that and still get the sort of unruly feeling of unrest and social discomfort that's coming through that record, and it is a complete work of art.
Yeah,
it really is, and coming from the genre of this sort of weird sort of art pop that you never expected them to really transcend into.
I mean, there are other good records involved. There were other great records made and on the long list and stuff. But as time has gone on, it feels to me that that's a great record.
Yeah.
So Wesley, are you want to hit us with any of your list that we don't know?
Yeah, since we're talking about Scottish stuff, we can talk about some stuff. I think for me, top of the list in terms of Scottish stuff, apart from Young Fellows, was the Master System record, dance music.
Right.
So that was great. I think for me this year, obviously we had this sort of tragic news this year that Scott Hutchison had taken his own life, and I don't think we should really dwell on it too much in the podcast, other than just really discuss what a great parting gift he'd left for everyone. It was just a terrific album for me. I mean, like as someone who's kind of grown up in the 90s with, as a lot of us has, the sort of the grunge, all kind of rock stuff, like noise rock stuff, Sonic Youth and all that was really hugely appealing to me because it had that sound that Frightened Rabbit didn't have, and I'm a huge Frightened Rabbit fan, as a lot of us are, but it had that sort of sound while still having the sort of powerful, penetrative lyrics that Scott has always brought to the table. And I think it was basically, obviously, him and Grant had brought the band together with Justin Lockie and James Lockie from Justin from Editors and his brother James Lockie, who were in Minor Victories, and run Handheld Cine Club together, which is the sort of video production company. And it really came about because apparently Scott was watching Paul's tour with Frightened Rabbit quite a lot, and he was just like completely jealous of how they would just whip out their pedals and just plug them in and just start playing every single night, and he was like, I really want to go back to the way that it used to be, so let's put together this band. And that was the last time I ever saw Scott perform live, because it was very, very close to that time, and they played a show at the art school, and we'll discuss gigs later, but it was just a really energetic, raw album, and it touched on a lot of really difficult issues in a completely new way that he hadn't explored before and the band hadn't explored before, which is a very interesting record. I don't know if any of you have checked it out.
I haven't, I have to say.
Yeah, I heard it,
and I think the other one for me as well was the R.M. Hubbard and Aidan Moffat. The Here Lies the Body album. The Christmas album that they brought out recently was also really, really good.
I really like the Christmas album.
Really nice way to round off the year, I think. But Here Lies the Body was great for me. I think you have, when you see an R.M. Hubbard and Aidan Moffat collaboration happening, you've got certain expectations of it. You expect it to be good for a start, but you expect Hubby to bring something to the table and Aidan Moffat to bring something to the table, yet it doesn't at all take you down that like path of predictability that you expected.
Actually, I agree totally. Because they've collaborated before,
of course,
and you think, I know what this is going to sound like, and you go, nah.
No, it doesn't at all. It takes all the sort of best and like well recognised elements of both of their work, and then adds all of these extra layers, not least with the addition of Siobhan Wilson playing, I think she plays cello on the record, and adding vocals to it as well, and it's a very much a more forlorn and sort of soulful Aidan Moffat that you've never really heard before, and it's almost surprisingly uplifting in this sort of bleak little story there that's going on. It's just a really, really tender, really intimate record, and it kind of felt like, listening to it for the first time, it was as if you were like kind of wrapped away in a sort of cosy bothy with your friends, and you kind of leave to go down to the pub to have a little Hoff and then come back up the road again to kind of round it off, and it was just very, very atmospheric without being forced.
I think what Aidan Moffat in particular is doing, and a lot of the people that he collaborates with, is really interesting because, as we know, we've spoken in previous years, he kind of started to immerse himself in the history of folk music and really look into that. And what he's doing now, really, is a kind of his own take on folk music. Yes. You know, it's the stories that from those around him, and he's a storyteller, and that's what he's doing at the moment in a great way.
I think that comes through really sharply on the Christmas record as well, where there's a couple of tracks that are basically just spoken word pieces from him. You know, he's telling stories from start to end, and Hubbard is just creating like a soundscape behind him to accompany it. You know, there's a story told kind of from the point of view of a Christmas tree as it's cut down and put in a house and then eventually burned on the fire, you know, used for firewood. There's another one about his daughter potentially seeing the ghost of an old man in the mirror and all this kind of stuff, and it's really interesting the kind of point he's at in his career, and also kind of charting the development of his career. It feels like since the end of Arab Strap, he's kind of gone from project to project. He's never really settled on one thing too long. You know, he was kind of doing LPR for a while after Arab Strap ended.
God, I forgot about that.
And after that, he did the spoken word stuff, you know, and then he did an album with the best ofs, and then finally settled into the Bill Wells stuff. He added a couple albums there, but now he's also left that behind, did the Where You're Meant to Be stuff, and now he's working with Hubbard and he's done 2 albums with him in a year. It was almost kind of startling to me to realise, like, they actually haven't made an album together before. You so associate like Hubbard and Moffat as, you know, collaborators, as members of the same scene, and kind of having come up together at the same time, whether it's, you know, when Hubbard was in like El Hombre Trajeado, or like or, you know, Moffat was in Arab Strap, and just kind of constantly kind of cross-pollinating and all of that. And it's just this really it's really startling to realise this is actually the first full-length thing they've done together, especially when you think like Car Song is kind of like a high point in both of their careers. That initial collaboration on record with, like, you know, the pair of them, and to get like 2 entire albums worth of stuff in the 1 year is like, finally this makes sense. Because I think, like, for all that it's a kind of a departure for both of them, especially Here Lies the Body, I do think that like Hubbard's melodic sense isn't a million miles removed from Malcolm Middleton. So there are definitely moments on the Christmas album in particular that feel like the closest we've had to Arab Strap since Arab Strap split. Like particularly like late period Arab Strap, like Where We Left Our Love kind of Arab Strap, you know, or like To All a Good Night kind of Arab Strap, you know, that kind of more subdued and less body and kind of more reflective and, you know, on age and mortality, you know, that kind of stuff. So just both beautiful pieces of work.
And I think you're right. I think it's 2 people who just seem to understand each other, and when you've got Hubbard's, you know, sense of musicianship, it's just an incredible thing that they create. I would like to talk about a record which I don't think either of you, I might be wrong, it's C.S. Buchan and Friends, and the reason that is Charlie Buchan, and this is from Aberdeen. Now, one of the reasons I ended up doing the Aberdeen podcast was to talk to Charlie. He runs Fitlight Records, small record company who put out Best Girl Athlete, and Best Girl Athlete is Katie, Charlie's daughter. And basically Charlie then and Friends are the musicians behind that, you know, so they're putting it, but he put his own record out this year, and he's had stuff out before called C.S. Buchan and Friends. And I'm going to step away from the mic so I don't miss anyone out here. But it's a brilliant, again, it's collaboration, because if you judge people by the friendships that they keep, then he knows many people, because he's got Michael Chang, he's got I can't read because my eyes are terrible. He's got Katie Buchan on it, he's got Stephen Milne from the Little Kicks, I'll do it by memory. He's got Lisbeth Russo on it. He has Iona Fife on it, who won awards for being Folk Musician of the Year this year, and Pete Harvey, who's in Modern Studies, is on it. So, you know, he's got a lot of good collaborators. It's a fantastic record, and I think, you know, sometimes I'm guilty of it as anyone. We think about the Central Belt and the stuff that's happening between Glasgow and Edinburgh, but there's lots of other great music being made elsewhere. For instance, a lot of great music coming out of the Highlands and Islands as well. A band called Trookers are really interesting. So it's just a kind of plea to kind of check out stuff that's not just on your doorstep and that's happening elsewhere. You should also listen to the podcast we did with Charlie and Friends and Shane Strachan and a guy from oh God, I'll remember it in a minute. Up in Aberdeen, because it was really interesting to kind of get their take on one, what's happening in Aberdeen, and to see that there is a scene kind of happening up there as well. Any other Scottish stuff before we move on to?
Yeah, plenty actually.
Okay.
I think it's been, as you say, it's been a really strong year to the degree that we've already talked about so many albums, and I still have like a ton on my list that we haven't even broached yet. I really loved Lilo's album from this year.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
In January. Reflective on another trend this year, which I don't know if it's driven by streaming or whatever, but really short albums this year. A lot of albums were around like the 25-minute mark.
Yeah.
This year, particularly hip hop in particular this year, had a lot of that, or it went from one extreme to the other. You'd either get like a nice concise 25-minute album, or you'd get one like Migos or Lil Wayne or something, which would put out like an hour and 3/4, just to try and maximise their streaming numbers. But Lilo, again, probably the members would be familiar to anybody who's ever like drunk or eaten in like stereo or mono or like the old hairdressers or anything. Like they're well-known faces around Glasgow. They've been in the scene for years in various bands. But the album that they put out this year, Post Era, is kind of taking a kind of like, I guess, kind of instrumentation and sounds and textures from like 80s pop, I would say, but then kind of turn it into this kind of, maybe the sounds that you'd more associate with kind of like easy listening stuff, but then turn them into more kind of danceable material. So it's got that kind of energy of maybe an electronic act, but it's performed entirely by a live band, but again with these kind of more textured kind of interludes, and just really enjoyable listen, kind of thoroughly recommend. Very good live as well. Also really enjoyed the Wesley Chung album, Neon
Yes,
Coast.
I agree.
It's followed up last year, I believe. His album last year was The Great Albatross. One of your
Yes,
favourites
my
from last
favourite
year.
record of last year.
Yeah, it's kind of weird though that he's released it under his own name, because like The Great Albatross is one of these things like The Fall, whereas like it essentially is just him and whatever he has to hand. So it's interesting that he's actually chosen to put this one out as a Wesley Chung and not as The Great Albatross, because it's not a million miles away from The Great Albatross either.
He might have said that it's more kind of personal stuff about the move to Scotland. I think I have a feeling that's maybe the thinking behind it, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, but another gorgeous album, that kind of like Americana, like Laurel Canyon.
He's a real
kind of
talent.
stuff. Yeah, he's got, a singular voice in terms of songwriting, but also his actual singing voice is just really instantly recognisable and just has such a kind of richness to it, and it's just really expressive performer. I really loved the Proc Fiscal album, Insula, so he's kind of like it's largely instrumental, it's kind of instrumental grime. He's from Edinburgh, and it kind of struck me more as not a million miles away from Rusty, not totally as hyperactive, I would say, but definitely in terms of like the amount of sampling that's going on and just kind of bridging the divide between maybe like Glasgow and Edinburgh's kind of dance communities and the kind of like club scenes, and people who don't necessarily go out clubbing but still like that kind of music maybe. Just really interesting stuff. Really enjoyed that.
Non-clubbing clubbers.
Non-clubbing clubbers, hit me. I really like the self-titled debut EP from Hairband, who again are I get probably familiar faces to a lot of people from their work in other bands through the years. But saw them open for Seisumi, Korean indie band at Stereo a couple of months ago, and we just totally blown away. And they played at the Scottish Album of the Year Awards as well.
They did.
In the place of who won last year's Sacred Paws.
That's right.
They couldn't perform due to other commitments, but they handpicked Hairband to perform in their stead.
And we will talk about gigs later on, but I just want to say that I love that record as well, a Hairband record. It came out in monorail, which is interesting.
Yeah, they've started release,
absolutely. And I've seen them a couple of times live, and they are, I think, one of the best live bands you'll see. They're just phenomenal.
Yeah, it reminded me more than anything probably of Deer Hunter, I think, and that kind of like, they're an indie band, but they're so eclectic in what they draw from that it's just again bringing all these influences into something that sounds kind of new. They don't sound like Deer Hunter per se, but it's just that kind of that like cross-pollination of genres and that like eclecticism, that voracious kind of appetite for new sounds and like bringing it in. Really enjoyed it.
It's that really clever thing about being obviously being very good musicians, but it sounds like it could fall apart at any moment, but it doesn't. There's a looseness to it again. And they do, they'll swap instruments and things like that. They're a fan. If you get the chance to see them live, the record's great, but if you get the chance to see them live, I'd really recommend it.
Yeah. Another really solid album from the band formerly known as Happy Meals, who
Yes.
go by Free Love, Young Luxury Hits. They've quietly and steadfastly put out an album a year for the last, I think this is the 4th year in a row that we've had like an album length release from them. They've called a couple of them EPs, but just again another really solid one. Again, they're ones that if you see them live, it just completely transforms the experience as well. And
Yeah, they're excellent.
saw them open for the Flaming Lips at the Bars last year, and like, you know that it's like a tough job to compete with Flaming Lips in terms of spectacle, but like they really kind of went for it and really like put on a show. And again, the album's very, very solid. I think they've quietly become like one of the country's best bands. Name change or not, they're just so reliable and so consistent that it almost becomes easy to kind of undervalue them.
Yeah.
Because they're so good all the time. But yeah, it definitely really enjoyed that. And again, another band that like kind of shows the Scottish independent scene coming to terms with like a fear of pop. So it's like it's okay to sound like, to bring in instrumentation and sounds from like top 40 pop and make them your own.
I think pop is having a great time at the moment, and Carla Jason's album is a great example of that. This is someone who in Teen Canteen and and I collaborated with Eugene Kelly and Aidan Moffat as well. I think you've worked with.
Yeah.
But
currently on tour with Aidan Moffat and Ryan Hubbard as we speak.
So and I think Impossible Stuff seemed to be the kind of culmination of what she's been doing over the last quite a while now, and it came to great fruit. And again, it's an unashamed pop record, but with an indie heart at it as well, no doubt about it, and that's clearly what she loves. No?
Yeah, I put in one more shout for one more kind of great Scottish album from this year, and just slipped in at the very end of the year. It was literally released a fortnight ago. It's Amore's Sinking Into a Miracle. So
right.
Again, another kind of supergroup, kind of fronted by Richard Youngs, with drums by Paul Thompson from Franz Ferdinand, but not sounding like anything any of those guys have done before. It's kind of their take on like Arthur Russell, Larry Levan, Paradise Garage kind of stuff. So this kind of spacey, dubby disco stuff, which again, absolutely unafraid of pop. But if you've ever like listened to In the Light of the Miracle and been like, this is the best song ever put to wax, then this is definitely along those lines. Is definitely worth checking out for fans of that kind of era.
Embrace the pop as well. We've got to embrace the pop.
Definitely.
I just want to say before we go any further, it was Mood of Collapse was the guy I was trying to remember in Aberdeen, John Reid, and you check out his website. So there's a few other Scottish records I'd like to talk about. L-Space, Kipple Arcade, they're on last night from Glasgow, and I've been going on about them on the website for a while, but so this is their first full length release, and it's again, it's a pop record, but it's influenced by soundtracks as much as other bands, I think, and there's a real John Carpenter, Blade Runner-y feel. The songs are all about you kind of a future, a dystopia, or after things have all fallen apart. And as such, it's one of those kind of records that feels very current and very important right now, I think. I don't know if either of you... No, that's it. Well, you should definitely check out L-Space. They're a fantastic band. And then I also want to mention Vive La Rose, who was also... David Luxman Herbert, who was also one of our podcast guests. And this is the way it sometimes works. He sent me one of his tracks. I went, I think this is amazing. Schahalian. Off the record for She Who Hangs the Moon. Very much singer, songwriter, some guitar, but then other tracks have got strings and there's piano, and it's just it's utter class, from start to finish. So he sent me the rest of it and listened to that. I went, this is amazing. How did you make it? Did a podcast with him, and that's the way it works sometimes. But I would really recommend checking it out because he's done it again. I seem to be repeating myself about people who have done it off their own back, but he has done it off his own back again. He put it out, and there was good feedback, I think, from various record labels, but they were either just were full of, their rosters were full, or they couldn't do it now. So I went, you know what, I'm going to give this a go myself. And what he's produced is much better than it's got any right to be, considering that, and it shows you that it can be done. And although we're not talking about books, we've recorded a best of books one with Vicky Riley, and that's part of the discussion there, that there's more and more people who are putting out that. I mean, it is self-publishing, but there are ways of doing it that are more structured than that kind of vanity publishing used to be. So I think it's interesting that people are finding a way to get their things out there. But it's not all about Scottish stuff. What else have you guys been listening to over the years?
An abundance of stuff, to be quite honest. Just before we recorded, Chris and I were talking about how I feel like we've went through so many albums this year, but not tended to spend a lot of time with all of those albums.
Right.
So
what are ones which you have spent? Yeah.
That's why I've sort of struggled to put together a top 10, if you like.
Yeah, sure.
But ones that have stuck with me throughout the year, I was sort of looking at doing some notes coming into this and was thinking how to break it down really. And two sort of main themes or genres, if you like, really stuck out for me this year. And one of them, which I'll open with because I think it will lead into a lot of other stuff that Chris can talk about, would be female hip hop this year has been absolutely magnificent. I think it's been strong for a number of years now, but it's just going from strength to strength, I think. I mean, one of the albums of the year for me, I think, has to be Room 25 by No Name, which is absolutely outstanding.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think we spoke about, maybe briefly mentioned Princess Nokia last year, who was doing some really cool hip hop stuff. But No Name, like her, sort of represents this new breed of hip hop that's full of kind of soulful, subtle 90s throwbacks. And it comes off the back of a lot of the kind of soulful R&B stuff we've seen recently, which has been Solange and SZA and stuff like that. Yet she takes it to a completely different level. She sort of kind of subverting the expectations of kind of female rappers, and specifically women in hip hop. And it kind of channels the likes of Erykah Badu quite a lot. And she's put together this really forward-thinking and challenging and really thought-provoking record. And it sets it apart from really anyone else in that sort of neo-soul hip-hop genre at the moment. It blends a lot of jazz and poetry, and the musicality of it and the complexity of the ideas that it discusses is honestly like nothing I've heard in a long time. I'd really recommend anyone with any sort of interest in neo-soul, R&B, jazz, even if you're not massively into hip-hop. I don't think you need to be for this record.
Okay.
It's well worth checking
Sounds
out.
good. Is that one of yours as well?
Yeah, it's a terrific album. I think it's worth pointing out as well. She rose through Chicago's like spoken word scene, so that's kind of the origins of it. So rather than like necessarily coming from a strict hip hop background, is like I think is informed by that as well. So that's again the complexity of the ideas and her delivery, because her delivery is almost like it's a very conversational flow that she has. You know, you don't listen to it and think this is someone who's really. It doesn't feel like stylized. You know.
No.
Fragments of sound or whatever. It feels like she's got such a kind of mellow voice as well, and it's so just the way it comes through, and just some really sharp funny lines on it as well, you know. And she's probably best known, if anybody hasn't heard her solo work but is a fan of Chance the Rapper, you've probably heard her because she's guested on a couple of his records as well. But yeah, you know, she's really something else. Like her debut album was Telephone. Did that come out last year, the year before?
You think
it
2
years
ago?
Yeah, but like it was a fantastic debut. But this was just this fulfilled expectations of the follow up. Really, really strong piece of work.
Okay, and what about yourself? Top record, if you can have one.
If I had to pick it down to one, again, not to be like the whole like the record we need right now or whatever, but Sons of Kemet, Your Queen is a Reptile, which is such a strong jazz scene in London just now. It's ridiculous the amount of great kind of new young jazz bands that are coming through. Doing something new. Yeah, so you've got like the kind of this kind of driving force of Sons of Kemet is Shabaka Hutchings, who's a saxophonist. He's also responsible for The Comet Is Coming, who were nominated for the Mercury Prize last year. Sons of Kemet were nominated this year, but as well as him, you know, you've got like Nubia Garcia, Ezra Collective. You've just got this really strong young vanguard of like new jazz acts coming through. I mean, it's kind of parallel in America as well. Obviously, the kind of forefront of that in America is Kamasi Washington. You know, he came out of kind of rose to prominence off the back of his collaborations with Kendrick Lamar, and you know this kind of intersection of jazz and hip hop over there. And now you have a really strong kind of emerging jazz scene like all across, like in various cities across America.
That's interesting.
So, but Sons of Kemet, this one just feels very. Again, for an album that's largely instrumental, it feels so like politically urgent right now. You know, again, there are spoken words like contributions on it against the backdrop of this kind of like jazz that's it's so unusually like structured as well. The band is two drummers, saxophonist and a tuba rather than the bassist, so the bass line is played entirely on tuba, so you're really dependent on the sax to drive the melodicism of it, and it really feels like it comes down to like kind of rhythmic energy above anything else. That's really what it feels like when you're listening to it. It kind of feels like, why would I ever be listening to anything else than this right now, because it's so, it grabs you so much, it feels so kind of urgent and so necessary as you're listening to it, and vital. But then again, when it does bring in the kind of spoken word stuff, you know, you realise kind of the resonance that it has in terms of like affirming like kind of black identity just now, and was it with the rise of like, you know, the far right again and stuff like that, and just kind of standing against that and providing a bulwark to it. And like every track on it is named after, so the album's called Your Queen Is a Reptile, and all the tracks are My Queen Is, and it's finished by the name of a black woman from history, so like Ada Eastman, Doreen Lawrence, Nanny of the Maroons, you know, so it's all kind of affirming, you know, the historical importance and relevance of these black women who've maybe been overlooked as the history books have been written. So it's got political dimensions, it's got like this really like compelling like rhythmic sense. It's just such a strong piece of work. It's one that I've like not really stopped listening to since it came out in March. It's really strongest, highest recommendation for it, even if you don't think you like jazz.
Well, and that's just what I'm going to say, because I do like jazz, but there are people, the words jazz and spoken word put together, they kind of start to freak out. But it's I mean, is there Miles Davis overtones going on here?
Not really. I guess I would put it more in the line of like, I think like this kind of new wave of jazz that's coming through just now, both in America and here, is probably more influenced by kind of early 70s stuff. I would say that more kind of like cosmic jazz stuff, particularly Kamasi Washington, that kind of more spiritual element. So he would draw more from like Pharoah Sanders and, you know, Russ and Roland Kirk and you know, all these kind of guys who were even like Alice Coltrane and, you know, all this kind of stuff that was kicking about in the early 70s, where you had that kind of overlap of kind of like spirituality and, you know, black identity and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So really kind of more like kind of
so the way that it's interacting with hip hop is similar to what was happening there with soul music and kind of
I think so. I think again like that what's on this record isn't really hip hop. I would definitely paint it more spoken word than hip hop. Like they have like contributions from I don't even know if I would call him an MC, but who like appears on a couple of tracks and, you know, performs some lyrics, but it doesn't really function the way that rap does. It's just more, I think, to kind of like get the points across that they're trying to make with the music. But yeah, it's really, it sounds like little else I heard this year.
Okay,
I can't really think of that many like I think the main prior comparison I would make for it would be somebody more like Fela Kuti, I guess. I think like rather than American jazz, it feels like it's drawing more from like Afrobeat and that kind of sense that prioritises rhythm over melodicism necessarily. But yeah, really, really compelling listen. Really, really loved it.
Wesley, any another one that really struck you this year?
In terms of something that really probably stood out, or that I've been going back to quite a lot, is Casey Musgrave's album, Golden Hour, which has been really great. Casey Musgraves isn't someone I was particularly familiar with. I think this might be, somebody said this is like her 7th album or something like that. Yeah, she's done a few, Yeah, she's done quite a few, and not anyone I was really aware of. And it's very much in the vein of sort of country pop, if you like. But there's some really, really interesting musical moments on it. It sort of takes that tried and tested formula and now sort of stale country pop formula, you know, that Taylor Swift monopolised or something. Except it's a really mature version of it. There's a lot of musicality in it that really reminded me of Conan Moccasin at times, and even Mac DeMarco, and this sort of new wave of left field sort of, you know, rhythmic kind of music that's happening, but with like the sort of smart pop sensibility of podcast favourite Carly Rae Jepsen in there.
Absolutely.
And there's also even like sort of moments of like kind of the folkier side of Cat Power. It's great. It's very, very dreamlike. It sort of has lingered about in my mind quite a while after it. It doesn't say anything particularly powerful. It's all about, you know, relationships, and as a lot of country pop is, or a lot of country is. But yeah, it's a total gem. And also, speaking of country music, never a genre that I've really a genre I grew up with, around family members listening to, and I've appreciated in certain elements, but not something I've ever sought out albums. But it was a great album by Gretchen Peters this year called Dancing with the Beast, I think it was called. That's what I've written down here. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure that's what it's called. I'd first heard the Arguing with Ghosts song on the radio, which is really, really, really good. And yeah, some of the songs can sort of appear a little bit whimsical in a sort of country way that you would expect if you don't really delve into it a little bit more. But it's got really, really poignant lyrics, and it's got this sort of sinister undertone to it, which is actually a really, really interesting way of putting the album together. It's not really reinventing the wheel, but it's still a really, really solid, dark sort of country release.
Chris, have you want to stick it with another?
I really loved the Against All Logic album, 2012 to 2017. So Against All Logic is one of the aliases of Nicholas Jarre, who's a kind of producer, DJ, electronic musician who's put out several releases over the last few years, again under various kind of pseudonyms and what have you, but often kind of goes for kind of the more intellectual response to electronic music than necessarily something you'd want to dance to. I think his most famous release is probably Space's Only Noise, which came out I think 2011. Young guy, Chilean American, does really interesting stuff. I saw him at the Barras last year, I think, and again the first 25 minutes was entirely beatless. It was just him kind of playing about with electronic textures and light shows and stuff like that. Not to everyone's taste, obviously, if people were just there for a dance, but Against All Logic is his house music project, so it is explicitly stuff that you can dance to, and it is explicitly designed for that, and it is magnificent, from start to end. It's just a bunch of 4-on-4 kind of absolute banger after banger after banger after banger, just constructed from all these kind of. He's got a great ear for samples and just pulling from all kinds of sources, and I mean I don't know. To be honest, I'm not the best person to talk to about the history of dance music and stuff. I have a vague grasp of obviously.
Well, you already said you're a clubber.
Exactly, yeah.
A clubber who doesn't like clubbing. Never
been a clubber. I have a vague grasp of its evolution and stuff, going from house and techno and minimalism and all this kind of stuff. But it's fantastic. It's just such an enjoyable listen. I think for anyone who just enjoys kind of electronic pop or whatever, then it's just really solidly constructed from start to end, and it flows as well. Although I think it's a compilation of stuff that he's kind of released. That's why it's called 2012 to 2017. It's stuff that he released individually over that 5-year period, but it flows so well as an album from start to end. It's almost as if he conceived it with that in mind, and was just releasing it a track at a time over that time span. But yeah, again, really, really strong recommendation on that. I really loved it.
Before we move on to gigs, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the. There seem to be some themes, and there always is every year, but in Scottish music in particular. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Aidan and Hubby and Catherine Joseph as well. I think maybe in the darker side of things, but the kind of folk music, even moving into Americana with some bands like Gracious Losers and Starry Skies and stuff. But Modern Studies, Welcome Strangers, which is a step up from Swell to Great, I think was their last record. So it's kind of moved forward, and they had live shows with strings and backing singers and huge events. But I've also seen them doing it stripped down, and it works both ways. And a great collection of songs. But they're the standout song from the album for me is Mud and Flame, and that kind of gets into it. There's this almost going back to nature. There's a lot of nature, I think you said Catherine Joseph seems to be tapping into something which is not just about her, but something deeper. And Zoe Bestel's Transients, which again I think she's down in the Borders, and it's a record that has got birdsong on it and talks the skies, and there's a feeling maybe that sometimes you get music which is all urban and about the city, and I mean that in the widest sense as possible, the city living and stuff like that, but there seems to be a kind of movement or a theme at the moment to kind of look outside of that and to see kind of what else is going on, which I think is quite interesting. And I'm sure it'll be changed on its head by next year and something else will be happening. Gigs of the year. Let's briefly, before we finish, talk about our favourite gigs. I actually went to loads, but nearly all of them were small ones, kind of small venues, which I like. And I've now realised that's what I like to go to. I'm not really going to pay, £105 to see Hall & Oates anymore. But Chris...
I guess again, not leaving Scottish bands entirely behind us, I think particularly on this podcast we can't let a discussion of gigs this year go past without marking Teenage Fan Club's remarkable 3-night stand at the Barras in October, which was not really like anything I've ever seen done before. I know there's a real vogue just now for bands performing albums in full on tour, but to mount it on this scale, for anyone who doesn't know what they did, basically Teenage Fan Club this year reissued 5 albums that they put out on Creation Records throughout the 90s, so Bandwagon-esque, 13, Grand Prix, Songs from Northern Britain and Howdy, all of them put out between 1990 and 2000.
3 of the best records ever made.
Yeah, like an incredible run of work. And they performed them live in full over 3 nights. So the first night was Bandwagon-esque and 13, the second night was Grand Prix and Songs from Northern Britain, last night was Howdy, and then a set of like B-sides and rarities. And to see them all played in such close proximity, because there weren't encores, they didn't drop in songs from any other albums or anything, you know, or like come back out after the albums were done. They played the albums in full and that was it. So over the course of the 3 nights they played 75 songs, not repeating one of them. And it almost started feeling like a piece of epic theatre or something, you know? It was like you could see the band like evolve before your eyes, you know, from starting out with that kind of grungy...
And they had different members, I mean, you know, different drummers. Cause
they brought back, like they reflected the lineup who recorded the album. So they had Brendan O'Hare for the first night, you know, Paul Quinn, and Francis McDonald came back as well. So they really like committed to the bit, you know? And it was just remarkable to kind of see it done in such close proximity to one another, to hear the albums played in full and play out and have your full attention and like kind of chart the course of the band over a 10-year period compressed down into like 3 nights, you know, one after the other, and you'd see the same people coming back night after night. It really felt like kind of like we're all going through this together kind of thing. It was just, I've never seen anything quite like it. I think it was just a remarkable thing. And obviously, of course, Jerry Love's last gigs with the band in Glasgow. He's now announced that he's leaving, so it really feels like the end of an era.
Very much
the
so.
way that they could have marked that, you know, it really feels like here's a line in the sand moment. This is now the Teenage Fan Club minus Jerry Love era, which I don't know, it's heartbreaking for me because he's my favourite member, and I don't even know how they're going to cope with his loss because it's such an unusual kind of structure for Teenage Fan Club where they each take an equal amount of songwriting responsibility and perform their own songs. So now it's like, are they just not going to perform like Star Sign or Sparky's Dream or, you know, Disco Light anymore because they're so distinctively Jerry Love songs, and like his voice is so much, well, I mean, he sings them, but they're so clearly his songs. I can't really picture like Norman or Raymond taking over vocal duties on them, you know. So it feels like a very uncertain period just now for Teenage Fan Club. I'm very curious to see where they go from here.
Because I think if people aren't fans of Teenage Fan Club, surely everyone is. But if people aren't, then they maybe don't realise that there is this delineation of songs, and that's a Jerry song, that's a Norman song. Wesley, have you been gigging this year?
Yeah, lots of gigs as usual, and that was my top gigs. Teenage Fan Club, beautifully summed up by Chris there. I only went the first 2 nights, didn't manage to make it to the third night, unfortunately. Although for me, my love for Teenage Fan Club is pretty much up to Howdy, not including Howdy. Not through dislike of the albums. I don't think they've ever made a bad album. Just because that's just what I grew up listening to, and that's sort of where my love for Teenage Fan Club hadn't really reached beyond. But seeing them perform those songs, as Chris said, night after night was remarkable. And 13 was always an album I actually thought was a very underrated album.
Yes, I agree.
And except seeing it live made me realise it was an even better album than I thought it was. I didn't think it was a particularly brilliant album, just very underappreciated, but seeing it live, was excellent. I think for me, probably 2 massive standouts. David Byrne at the Royal Concert Hall.
That's the only one I have gig envy for this year, is David Byrne.
Did you make it to the Hydro one?
No, I didn't make it at all.
I saw the Hydro.
It was spectacular, and the only way David Byrne can make it spectacular. It was a piece of theatre, it was a piece of comedy, in a good way, deliberately so. The use of the stage and the production was remarkable. It was very, very stripped back. In the way that when he toured with St Vincent, the production on the stage was a little bit more visual in terms of, there's a lot going on. This was literally just a stream of lights hanging from the ceiling all around it that just seemed to envelop the band. And obviously, for anybody who hasn't seen David Byrne, he just walks around with a sort of travelling Mr. Boom-like marching band, everybody wearing their instruments, and it's perfectly choreographed, and the set list from start to finish. It was an album. His album came out this year, didn't
Yeah,
it?
Utopia came
it was
out
an album that
in
I didn't fall totally in love with.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. There's bits on it that were really interesting, bits that were very good, bits that were almost insufferable. But together, the set list that he put together was excellent. And the other one for me probably was I had the great pleasure of seeing the Twilight Sad twice this year.
Right.
3 times if you count the Cure, which again remarkable gig, but I'm kind of focusing on some smaller stuff. The Twilight Sad's 2 shows that I saw this year, one in Paris and one recently at the Liquid Room, has just completely cemented how much that band have just been elevated into one of the most, I hate using the word important, but there's very few bands just now who have just refused to change their sound and just stuck to what they know, what they want to make and what they're good at, and it formed such a strong, like, fervent fan base off the back of it. And their new stuff is very accessible. Twilight Sad was never completely inaccessible, but the new stuff is developed this sort of maturity in a way that doesn't feel forced.
Yeah.
It just feels very open to new audience members, and their live shows just taking an even bigger step up. James's vocals live are tremendous, and the Liquid Room show was pretty spectacular, because I think, again, speaking of Scott Hutchison this year, the last time I saw, and a lot of people probably saw anyone in Liquid Rooms from that sort of music scene, was Frightened Rabbit's last show there, and they've been performing Keep Yourself Warm a lot on this tour, so the emotional energy in the room that night was pretty heavy, but pretty special at the same time. And they've got Grant from Frightened Rabbit as now their tour manager, so the fact that they'd pretty much toured the new stuff around Europe and it finished in Edinburgh just seemed really appropriate, and a really, really special moment for the band, and I think next year's going to be a huge year for them, so spoiler alert, that's probably going to be my album of the year next year.
Gone too soon. Any other gigs, Chris?
Well, in terms of like larger scale stuff, I think I have to mention like Lauryn Hill, which I know Wesley was at as well. I don't think anybody really knew what we were in for with it, because she's so kind of mercurial and so kind of like, I mean, the week before she played the Hydro, she showed up 2 hours late.
Yes, I see. This is
and I think everybody was kind of like, are we going to spend our money here for a 40-minute set or whatever? And to be fair, she was only 40 minutes late in Glasgow.
Well.
So she came on stage, she was due on at 9:20. She came on stage at 10. Unfortunately, she had a curfew of 11. But she went past it. She played like a selection of tracks from the Miseducation Lauryn Hill, which is the tour was celebrating its 20th anniversary, ended with a couple of Fugees tracks, did Killing Him Softly, or Killing Me Softly with his song, I was getting my pronouns mixed up there, Killing Me Softly with his song, and Ready or Not, and then during Ready or Not the house lights went up, and it was like, right, get off, it's 11:15, you're 15 minutes past your curfew. But she was phenomenal. While she was on stage, it ended up being an hour and a quarter long set, and I think people could grouse at like having paid like 40, 50, 60 pound for a ticket.
Some people did.
Yeah, for 75 minutes, but it was just so extraordinary. While she was on stage, it really felt like being in the presence of like greatness.
She is great. I mean, absolutely.
But I mean, like someone of the stature of like, you know, like a Nina Simone or an Aretha Franklin or something, you really felt like you were seeing someone like, this is like a massive figure, this is a massively important figure in the history of popular music, and we're in the same room with her right now, and she's performing at like close to peak of her powers, you know, she's really just, it was remarkable, just absolutely incredible.
Is this going to lead to more recorded stuff? Does anyone know?
I can say, I mean,
because she hasn't done a lot,
no, she released an MTV Unplugged album a couple of years after the Miseducation, which had was largely new material, and was done kind of acoustically, but she hasn't really done much since then. A couple of songs here and there, but I think she hasn't been without her troubles over.
Yes, I know. I suppose that's right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that like the kind of upsurge in touring over the last couple of years has been financially motivated. But yeah, no, I mean, we'll see what the future brings, but just knowing that she's still out there and able to perform at that level is very heartening.
Yeah, and it felt a very timely return as well, in terms of, we were just discussing how strong women in R&B and hip hop have been over the past couple of years.
And she would have been influential in that,
she
absolutely.
Definitely was, and as Chris said, presence of greatness, as soon as she walked out on stage and just opened her mouth, I think the first words were something like along the lines of "Hello Glasgow," as you would expect, and I was like, wow, that's actually Lorna Hill speaking. This is unbelievable, but that was a special gig.
Yeah. In terms of smaller scale stuff though, just to not so that we're all talking about the Hydro all the time.
Don't worry, I'm
probably my favourite band in the country just now actually still haven't released an album, the Bossy Love, who we talked about before on here, but I saw them open for Ladytron actually at the QMU. I didn't even stay for Ladytron. I went I had friends who were going along who are friends with the band and were just like, do you want to come along with us to see them? And they played for half an hour and they're just incredible. They're just so good. There's just nobody else in the country right now. Again, it's pop. And it's unashamedly pop, and there's just no one else in the country just now doing it as well as them. They're just so on it, on everything. They just every aspect of it, of how they present themselves on stage, the influences they draw from, the way they kind of synthesize it into their own thing and play to their individual strengths. It's just it's a masterclass in how to put on a pop show on a budget. They're just really. Yeah, they're fantastic. Cannot wait for them to actually finally release an album. Yeah, I think it'll blow a lot of people's minds.
And is that coming next year, do you think?
Fingers crossed.
So I think we've got Chris's favourite album of 2019 and we've got Wesley's favourite album of 2019. As I said before, I've been going to loads of small gigs, increasingly small spaces. One which stood out for me was Broadcast, and it was the aforementioned L Space. And Half Formed Things from Edinburgh, a guy called Bob Robertson. Now the reason this was so exciting to me is because I love L-Space, and Half Formed Things have only released a couple of songs. They've got an album hopefully coming out soon. I just love what they do. How can I explain it? You've got incredible kind of driven drums and harmonies and keys, and it just rattles a lot. It's kind of like early-ish Radiohead, that kind of stuff. It rattles along at a fair speed, and you think the song's ended and then it goes off again, and they're an incredible band, and I can't wait for their album to come out, which should come out next year. I've already mentioned Hairband, who played at Mono, and the Mono gig in particular when they were kind of headlining was fantastic. I should also mention, with the caveat that this is an advert for my brother's place, but Andy still puts on these gigs at Braemar Gallery, and he's doing more and more of them as things go on. And there was a couple this year that were just phenomenal. One was, I think we've mentioned it before, but Barry James, who's got an album coming out next year, formerly of Cassidy. He's done a lot of soul, really psychedelic, kind of 70s psychedelic stuff, weird and trippy and interesting. And so he's got new music coming out, and he was up there playing. The other one which I want to mention was Starry Skies, or Makita Starry Skies, who supported, I think they went under the name Tenement and Temple, but it was Monica Queen and Johnny Smiley, who had been in Thrum many years ago, before Monica's solo career. And I think Monica is one of the best singers we have. It's an incredible voice. And they finished with doing Monica Queen songs, which saw me and my brother almost in tears because we were hearing them live like that in space. But yeah, it's a small gallery. It's in Braemar. My brother runs it, and they put on gigs. So if you're in the area, go up and check them out, because there's some amazing ones going on. And then even smaller than that was the house gig that Chris and I went to. Ross Dix. We should say this is a growing phenomenon. These house gigs. I know the stuff's been recorded in flats and put out regularly before, but I went to a couple this year. One was last night from Glasgow one, and then this one was Carl Easton, because it was partly her flat. Yes. And two Canadian. Carla had been in Canada, and you can hear this on the podcast that she did with us earlier in the year. So she brought two musicians over, Marlena Moore and Tim the Mute, and then she played, and Eugene Kelly played as well. So you had this incredible situation of sitting in someone's front room, kind of like we are at the moment, with a setup in the corner and just hearing these amazing musicians play. It was brilliant.
Yeah, being like 10 feet from Eugene Kelly. It was like, I mean, I know that's not a massive rarity in Glasgow. Like any of us at any given time can be 10 feet from Eugene Kelly, but
not know it.
And I was at Teenage Fan Club. Like the last night at Teenage Fan Club, Eugene Kelly and Francis McKee were standing in front of me. It was like the Vaselines are right here. Like it's one of those things where you just kind of have to stop yourself every now and again and be like, think of like how many American indie bands are like massively jealous right now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it was incredible. It'd just be like, I mean, he played mostly. He only did like 4 songs there or something, but like one of them was a Vaseline song. He did High Tide, Low Tide, you know. So like,
I'm happy.
argue
But
with that, yeah.
I like the idea that these are happening about the place, and sometimes you could go into someone's room or see someone playing that you just don't expect.
Yeah,
and that's indicative of the creative culture we've been talking about. It's
absolutely.
been really strong again this year.
Absolutely, and really supportive, and people are turning up saying, yeah, I'll play at that gig, or I'll just turn up in the audience at that gig and see these things. Well, I think that is the perfect place to leave it. So that was music for 2018. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, Wesley.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian.
Cheers.
And we'll be back in the new year with loads of different people, so cheers.